2017 to order. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. And please let the record note that with the exception of Ms. Cares and Ms. West, all council members are present this evening. We have minutes of the meeting of December 11th without objection. They'll be approved. We'll move on to our schedule of committee reports. Ms. Rabine.
Thanks, Mayor Ingen. Just for the folks in our audience tonight and for those watching from home, tonight is the last City Council meeting of 2017. City Council will not meet next week because it's Christmas Day. We hope everybody has a happy holiday and a nice, safe one. So we're setting committee meetings until through the, I think, let's see, our first Monday is going to be the first, or our next meeting will be the first Monday in January. So setting committee meetings for, I think, like almost 2 to 3 weeks here. Committee of the Whole, we had a little gathering across the way this evening at Thomas Marbar. We announced that last week from 5:30 to 6:45. And then Committee of the Whole is going to meet this week Wednesday from 11 a.m. until noon here in the City Council chambers. And then Committee of the Whole will meet again on this next slate of meetings are going to be held the 3rd of January 2018. It feels kind of weird to say that. I don't know where 17 went, but it'll be 3rd of January 2018. Committee of the Whole will meet from 8:55 in the morning to 9:15. Parks and Conservation meets 9:20 to 9:50. Administration and Finance Committee will meet from 9:55 until 10:10. And the Land Use and Planning Committee is scheduled to go from 10:15 in the morning until noon. All of those meetings are being held right here in the City Council chambers at 140 West Pine.
Thank you, Ms. Rabine. Any changes to that committee schedule? Right, seeing none. So I'm going to bounce out of order ever so slightly. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had a technical error with regard to the Colon Ditch annexation zoning and the townhome exemption. I apologize for that. That technical error has to do with notification. We are required by our own rules to deliver that notification via certified mail. We did not do that. We delivered that notification via first-class mail, and we're not going to be in violation of our own rules. So we will not be hearing any of that tonight, and council won't be taking action tonight. We will re-notify. So those of you in the audience, I suspect some of you are interested in this, we'll re-notify through certified mail, which we're required to do, and then we will begin the process anew. So we'll end up having a public hearing on the annexation and zoning, and we'll end up considering the conditional use as well. That will all happen, we hope, in January. And Mary McCrae, to her credit, has done some math for me. And Mary, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. So we will have a committee meeting on the resolution of intention to annex and zone on January 3rd. That's a committee meeting. Those happen on Wednesdays in this hall. On January 8th, assuming that council moves that item forward, council would likely adopt that resolution of intention. We will follow that up with our required notification through advertising, and there would be a public hearing on that resolution on February 5th. Does that all sound right, Mary? Okay. With regard to the townhome exemption, that would be referred on the 22nd of January. It would be before the Land Use and Planning Committee on a Wednesday on January 31st. It's a pre-public hearing conversation. And the public hearing on that would be on February 5th. We will get, so you'll get notice of this as a function of that certified mailing. I'll ask Ginny Merriam to help us make sure that we have this information on the website in a fairly obvious place for you all. And if any of that is further confusing, do not hesitate to give my office a call at 552-6001. I apologize for the inconvenience. We just learned about the error late this afternoon. Otherwise, we would have done our best to let you all know that we weren't considering this tonight. I apologize for the inconvenience, but we try to do things right. And when we make mistakes, we try to fix them, and we don't want to proceed without giving you all due notice based on our regulations. So that's the story with regard to that issue, so we won't be talking about that this evening. We will move on to the public comment public comment portion of our agenda. This is your opportunity to comment on items that are not elsewhere on the agenda. Thank you folks for coming down. I apologize. And we'll proceed with public comment. Commissioner Curtis.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I just wanted to come down tonight to, there's a lot of things in the news about dysfunctional government, and I wanted to come and thank you for not being part of that. I want to thank you for your public service, and I especially want to thank those that are outgoing. So Emily and John and Marilyn and Annalise, thank you for your service. I know that Marilyn plans to continue her public service and run for the legislature. I know John's given us lots of public service. Hopefully you get to play with those grandbabies before you find some committee that somebody will appoint you to. And Emily, we already have you signed up to help us at the fairgrounds, and that's great as a fair director. And Annalise, I look forward to working with you on the MEP board. So it kind of gets in your blood, I guess. And then I'd just like to welcome the new members. I haven't had the opportunity to meet Jesse yet, but Julie and Heather and Stacy, welcome. And Mr. Mayor, thank you for your service and continuing. And Mirta, congratulations to you. You're my newest ward member, so just thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other general public comment this evening? All right, seeing none, we will move. I'm sorry, Mr. Moore.
My name is Bob Moore. It's very heartening, should be very heartening to hear the mayor just make 3 statements that he wanted to make sure the mayor and the city council did things correctly and that you followed your own rules. You just made 3 statements to that effect. I have brought this attention to 3 or 4 times. When the MRA looks at applications for their handouts, such as the $1.5 million to Stockman Bank. Number 10, project financing. Types of financing, this is when they're looking at the application for a handout. Project financing. Types of financing available to the applicant. Lender participation commitments, industrial development revenue bonds, and state and federal grant monies. For example, are examined to assess the need for TIF assistance. Per 2 meetings at the MRA board, that has never been done. You've never looked at an MRA project, Stockman Bank, shopping center, on and on and on and on, to see if they need TIF assistance. Well, here's one of your criteria. So this will be good to see on your next one because you want to follow your own rules. I just heard that. And to do this, you got to look at number 10, to see if these places really need financing. At the MRA board, I asked somebody representing the shopping center, would the project be done if no millions and millions of taxpayers' money was given to them? They stated that the project would be done. I asked the developer for the Marriott Hotel over here on Higgins the same question. Yes, the project would be done, may be delayed a little bit. They probably have to redo their paperwork. So, I'm going to take you at your word that you will start following the rules that the city follows, or don't follow and has put in. An opinion, clear answers, and details. Two of the city councilmen was describing one of the projects. The thing I was really mostly interested in was how much money was the taxpayers going to pay. Is there anything in this article about how much the taxpayers are going to pay out of $80 million for the hotel, Fox Hotel, and the convention center? Not in here.
And that's 3 minutes.
Oh, 3 minutes, very quick. Thank you, sir.
Any other general public comment this evening? All right, seeing none, we'll move.
Sir, you come. I walk slow. Hello, everyone. How are you? I apologize for interrupting your Christmas party over at the Thomas Meager Bar. I thought that was the open comment area, so I went over there. So, this is in regards to me living in an RV. Why do you guys think that we're lower class citizens? You think that we are better than you? I think, we are better than you. And the reason why is because you guys are house dwellers and have a mortgage or rent, taxes, heat, water, lawn work, sidewalk maintenance, things like that you need to take care of. Whereas me, a houseless person, I pay for the insurance and the license plate and those city taxes. The gas and the propane and the food for my family and also for my animals. I did not start this way. I had 3 trailers. I had them in my name and one in my brother's name. I was assaulted by 2 people, no criminal prosecution by the police department's part. I was told to stay away from the area, that the landlord said that I abandoned them, so that I lost them by the court. One of my trailers was a remodeled trailer that was a Section 8 trailer. It was one of the best Section 8 trailers ever. And the reason why I'm saying this is because Tim Nugent is also the city prosecution who is also in charge of Section 8 housing. So it's like a conflict of interest and so on. What would Brett's RV or Gull Boats or Rankage Brother think when Marilyn Marler made the comment that the city and the waste and the gray water and the black water? If you're not aware, there are 24-hour convenient places, let me go back, 24-hour dump sites with potable and non-potable water. There are plenty of garbages in the local area and plenty of spots to park. There's just one problem. Charmel Owens stalks the homeless or the houseless after they've been put in that position. We have documents to prove that the city intimidated our last landlord in breaking laws, for if they did not want any problems with the city, they were to follow their rules. And it was a document that also presented the landlord to show, wanted us. The document also showed the presence that they wanted the landlord to fear us and call for backup. So instead of changing the Ninth Circuit ruling, why not help the homeless or the houseless people? Yesterday I was told that we were in a park for more than 2 weeks. And that's a fib, a lie. Why do you have to teach your officers to lie? We've been at that spot for 5 days. Here's the kicker. 6 months ago, I talked, more or less broke down in front of a police officer, a retired police officer. He informed me just to move from place to place and to try to stay invisible. Again, this was 6 months ago. Ideas? Maybe a spot that helps that can help us rather than harm us. Maybe the Missoula Fairgrounds. All you need is a sewer and potable water, maybe a flat surface. That would be helpful. It doesn't have to be the KOA. It has something that can have, just for people like me having a hard time, okay? Or if they choose that way of life. In April, 34 more families are going to be displaced. And why do I say that? Because the Missoula Independent said that Skyview Trailer Park is closing. That's even more families because that's even more funny because that's where 2 of those trailers that I talked about earlier were in. 34 trailers that are abandoned and moving out of the Missoula city limits. FYI. Offenders live in that area, and so you're going to be dispersing them throughout the Missoula city. There's another reason for a consolidation of this houseless people is for you to have an eye on crime control. Without charging much, you can then help with the houseless people and giving them a positive message rather than giving them bad business judgments, or hey, come talk to us. I have evidence that I had a broken foot and I was without a job for 5 months. I came out of a massive depression, and in and out of this depression I had at my door. That totally takes you out of trying to heal. I'm trying to get back on my feet, trying to get a job, trying to get a place to put my RV. Thank you. Please take into consideration, instead of making us houseless, making a place for all of us. I mean, seriously, why don't you guys take your RV, your motorhome, a tent, live outside like this for a whole week? See what you think. Do you think it's a camping thing? I doubt it. Not even camping. Thank you. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Ms. Hammond. Any other general public comment
Funny,
this
I
evening?
didn't even say my name, I don't think.
Looks like you need your coat, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am. Now it's Miss Hammond. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Any other general public comment this evening? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Items on that agenda were approved unanimously in council standing committees. We save a little time on Monday evenings by considering these items all at once. Ms. Rabine will read the list of consent agenda items aloud so folks in the audience and those at home will know what we're considering, and we'll take comment on these items before we vote. Ms. Rabine.
So tonight's consent agenda has 10 items, and the first is to approve claims, which are the city's accounts payable. And we're approving them in the amount of $962,826.74 for checks that are dated tomorrow, December 19th, 2017. Number 2 is the first reading and preliminary adoption of an ordinance. City Council is setting a public hearing on January 8th, 2018, and preliminarily adopting an ordinance to rezone property located at 3630 North Reserve Street. It's a 1.66 acre tract of land, and it's legally described as Lot 1 of the North Reserve Business Center, Phase 3 in Section 8, Township 13 North, Range 19 West, Principal Meridian, Montana. This is the site of the former Johnny Carino's. That's more familiar to folks than the address and the legal. There's a proposal to zone it from NRBC/EC, which is the North Reserve Business Center with an enterprise commercial overlay, to C2-4, which is a community commercial zoning district, based on the findings of fact in the staff report from Development Services, and referring this matter and the ordinance to the Land Use and Planning Committee for presentation prior to the public hearing. Number 3 is to confirm the mayor's reappointment of Whitney Kemble Bergman to the Tourism Business Improvement District Board for a term that begins immediately and expires on December November 1st, 2021. Number 4 is to confirm the mayor's reappointment of Amy Sillenberg to the Missoula Urban Transportation District Board, also known as Mountain Line, for a term beginning immediately and expiring on December 31st of 2021. Number 5 is to adopt a resolution of the Missoula City Council awarding neighborhood project grant funds for fiscal year 2018 to certain organizations and directing staff to negotiate contracts and agreements with those organizations. Number 6 is to adopt a resolution rescinding the current public landscape and recreation facility design manual and adopting the updated Missoula Parks and Recreation Design Manual 2018 edition, directing staff to begin immediate implementation of the adopted Missoula Parks and Recreation Design Manual 2018 edition. Number 7 is to approve and authorize the mayor to grant a 20-foot wide underground gas utility easement across a portion of Honeysuckle Park to recognize existing gas line supply and service lines for Northwestern Energy. Number 8 is to set a public hearing on January 8th, 2018 on a resolution revising the City of Missoula Parks and Recreation fee schedule for parks and recreation programs, facilities, and permits, and return this matter to the Parks and Conservation Committee so additional information requested by the committee can be reviewed prior to the public hearing. Number 9 is the Cullen Ditch Grove Street Townhouse Project. The motion here, as the mayor indicated, we're going to do something different with it, but it reads to adopt a resolution extending the corporate limits of the City of Missoula to annex within the boundaries of the city 3 tracts of land located west of Grove Street and south of the Clark Fork River, further described with the meets and bounds description in petition number, it's an annexation petition, number 9862, and zone the property RT 5.4 residential in the south portion of the parcel Exhibit B, OP1 open space. That's all located in Section 19, Township 13, North, Range 19, West, Principal Meridian, Montana. Once again, the mayor has announced that this matter, instead of being approved this evening, will be returned to the Land Use and Planning Committee, and we will schedule further public hearings on both the annexation as well as the conditional use requests for that property. And finally, number 10 is to approve the gasoline and fuel sales conditional use in the C1-4 neighborhood commercial zoning district 2350 Reserve Street in accordance with the city zoning ordinance title 20 section 20.10.020 sub D, 20.40.060 and 07 and 20.85.070 based on the findings of fact in the Development Services Staff Report and subject to conditions of approval as amended by the Land Use and Planning Committee at their meeting held December 13th, 2017, and as shown as in Exhibit 1 in the attachments to the agenda, and that's the consent agenda tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Rabine. So my understanding is that there's desire to to refer item number 10 to committee reports. Is that correct, Mr. Bari? Okay. So we won't consider that item. Without objection, we'll simply push item number 9 down the road. Yep. Okay, no objection there. All right, so in effect, we will have a roll call vote after public comment on items 1 through 8. So anyone in the audience care to comment on items 1 through 8 this evening? All right, seeing none, questions or comments from council members? Seeing none of those, we'll have a roll call vote.
On the consent agenda, items number 1 through 8. Armstrong votes yes. Becerra votes yes. Bentley votes yes. DeBari votes yes. Heddle votes yes. Hess votes yes. Jones votes yes. Marler votes yes. Von Lossberg votes yes. And Wilkins votes yes. Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 10 ayes and 2 absent.
And the consent agenda as such stands approved. We'll move on to comments from city staff, agencies, boards, commissions, authorities, and the community forum. And we have a Grant Creek Neighborhood Council report this evening from Mr. Lindler.
Good evening. I'm Bert Lindler from the Grant Creek Neighborhood Council. About 25 residents attended our meeting on December 12th. Newly appointed Ward 2 Council member Martha Beckera introduced herself at the beginning of the meeting, and newly re-elected member Jordan House provided an update on City Council actions affecting the neighborhood. Shane Stack, Missoula project engineer for the Montana Department of Transportation, discussed traffic safety on Reserve Street. An insurance company recently reported that Reserve Street had 4 of the 5 intersections with the most accidents statewide from 2014 to 2016. Stack said that report was not based on a scientific study. For instance, the report did not consider the amount of traffic going through the intersections and did not separate injury accidents from those involving just property damage. He did say that the department will be adding barriers between the north and southbound lanes on Reserve Street from Mullen Road to River Road to prevent serious accidents there. He said there were few other design options to improve safety on Reserve Street, but that education and enforcement could be pursued. Stack thought that improvements to Russell Street could relieve some of the traffic now crowding Reserve. Although a bypass west of Missoula could still be considered, he said, that's an option that's only become more expensive in recent years. Meanwhile, Grant Creek residents have been advocating for an additional southbound lane and a right turn lane on Grant Creek Road at the I-90 Reserve Street interchange for more than a decade now. The city has committed $200,000 to the project, which now includes improvements to the traffic signal on the south side of the I-90 Reserve Street interchange and the traffic signal at Reserve and Expressway. Those parts of the project are going to be funded by the Montana Department of Transportation. The project is tentatively scheduled for 2020. Quite a disappointment to those of us who hope to see construction next year. But Stacks would like to have the project ready in 2019 when another construction project is scheduled for I-90 in the immediate area. During leadership team elections, 5 members were re-elected and 4 new members were elected. The new members are Mary Manning from Glen Eagle, Wendell Beardsley from Grantland, Colorado Gulch, Calvin Gettle from the Cottonwoods, and Kevin Davis, business representative. 1 leadership team member has another year remaining in her term. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lindler. We'll move on to the public hearing portion of our agenda. State law and our own council rules set guidelines for inviting comment on a variety of issues. Following a staff report on each of these, the council and I will take comment. Council typically votes on the same evening as a public hearing unless one member elects to return that item to committee for further consideration. And we're going to shuffle the order a little bit this evening based on everyone's time. I'd like to take the conditional use at Brook Street first, and Ms. Baker.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jenny Baker. I'm with Development Services, and this evening I will talk to you about a request from Bill Coffey, who is the CEO of Stockman Bank. He is represented by CTA Architects. There are two members of the firm here this evening, and they are asking for an enterprise commercial conditional use approval at 3601 and 3611 Brooks Street. This is the location of the property. It's shown by the red star. It's on Southwest Brooks Street at the intersection with Door Lane. It's across from the Missoula Federal Credit Union, and it's part of Missoula's Ward 5 and the Southgate Triangle Neighborhood Council. The applicant has requested a boundary line relocation on these 2 parcels. On the left is the current configuration of the boundaries, and on the right is what the parcels will look like pursuant to the boundary line relocation. The parcel at the top will be sold to another developer. So when I am referring to the parcel for Stockman Bank in this conditional use request, I'm only talking about the southern section that's marked Bank Council on the slide, or on the picture at the right. The property is zoned C1-4, which is neighborhood commercial, where enterprise commercial development over 30,000 square feet requires a conditional use approval. This is the growth policy map, and according to the Our Missoula City growth policy, the land use designation for this area is regional and commercial services, which are defined as uses with large land requirements or ones that rely on automobile traffic, uses that provide support to business or industry, and uses which support highway travel. The growth policy describes regional and commercial services as the type of facilities that need to be located in proximity to major transportation routes. Brook Street is classified as a major arterial within the city and extending into US Highway 93 South beyond city limits. It is such a major transportation route. This is the full site plan. There at the bottom left, you can see where the new building will be located. It holds the corner of Brook Street and Door Lane. To the right on the slide is customer parking, and that extends along the back of the lot. In the center, right at the back of the building, you can see that there's a drive-through, and the parking spaces that are adjacent to that drive-through are designated as employee parking. The dark areas are landscaping, so that's along the Brook Street frontage, Door Lane, and in some other areas. Sidewalks and boulevard landscaping are included in this project, and I'll talk more about those when I review the conditions of approval. This is the floor plan for the main customer-oriented floor of the building. The proposed building is 3 stories above grade and a basement. The second and third floors will be offices, and the basement contains a conference and training room, some storage, and mechanical rooms. Each story occupies roughly the same footprint as this floor plan, about 13,500 square feet. The higher floors are a little bit smaller because they step back from the street a bit on the exterior of the building. I will show you a couple of building elevations. This drawing is, this shows the north side of the building with the customer entrance, and the east side of the building, the east side of the building has the customer entrance, and there on the north you can see the drive-through. Here you're looking at the west and east sides of the building facing the corner of Brooks and Door Lane. That's designed as a 3-story glass facade, and we will talk a little bit more about building design in the Enterprise Commercial Standards. The Enterprise Commercial Standards. Title 20, Section 2040.050 has specific standards for enterprise commercial development. I'll go through the standards and explain how the project meets them. A number of the standards have to do with parking and pedestrian circulation in the parking lot. EC uses must try to reduce the visual impact of parking from the public right-of-way. In this case, you can see that all of the parking is either beside or behind the building, and none of it comes between the building and the street. Also, according to EC standards, there must be an 8-foot sidewalk along the facade which contains the customer entry. That is the red line. That's the facade with the customer entry, and the 8-foot sidewalk also extends along the parking to the rear of the lot. There's also a landscaped entry plaza, which will be adjacent to the customer entry. EC uses have to have pedestrian circulation plans to get pedestrians safely from the parking lot to the building. This project has the 2 8-foot concrete sidewalks and 4 delineated pedestrian crossings to get people to those sidewalks. Those are where the oval circles are on the slide. EC standards require that the building is separated from drive aisles by at least 6 feet. That is the case with this project, and it's accomplished with landscaping, except for the small segment of the building that is adjacent to the drive-through, where it is less than 6 feet from the drive lane. The pedestrian crossings have to be differentiated from the pavement, and in this case, there are 2 striped crossings and 2 crossings that will have a different material from the surrounding pavement. Also, EC uses have to be located along an arterial street, and as mentioned earlier, Brook Street is a major arterial. In considering building design standards, we'll look again at this rendering. There are specific standards for EC projects, and applicants must meet 4 of 6 of those standards. In this case, the building meets the requirements for color variation, with different colors of brick interspersed with greenish glass windows. It meets the requirement for a variety of textures and materials by alternating brick, stone, and glass. It meets the requirement for modulation with upper story setbacks and the projecting roof of the drive-through. And finally, each facade of the building has greater than 20% transparency by including doors and windows. In the next few slides, we'll go over the conditions of approval. The first one is the standard condition that this project will conform with all applicable standards of Title 20 and other Missoula municipal codes, that the plans submitted for building permits will substantially comply with those reviewed as part of this conditional use request. The second condition requires a 6-foot concrete sidewalk along Brook Street and a 10 to 16-foot landscaped boulevard. The sidewalk on this slide is the red line, and below that, the boulevard is 10 feet adjacent to it, and then as you get towards the corner, it widens to 16 feet. The next condition is relevant to the door lane frontage, and here it's a 5-foot concrete sidewalk and a 7-foot landscaped boulevard. There's a public access easement along this frontage because the property line would cut through the middle of the sidewalk, so the easement extends 1 foot beyond the edge of that sidewalk so that it's all covered. As we discussed last Wednesday, we spoke with the engineering department, who agreed to a change to condition of approval number 5. It originally stated that there would be an 8-foot concrete sidewalk along that northern boundary of the employee parking. Instead, with engineering, the architect worked out that a striped crosswalk or some delineated pedestrian crossing from the edge of the parking spaces to the employee entrance, which is marked with the big arrow, would be adequate rather than that sidewalk. In looking at the conditional use review criteria, the project will comply with all applicable standards of Title 20 zoning ordinance as required by condition of approval number 1, and that will be verified at the time of building permit issuance. The project is compatible in character with the surrounding uses. All surrounding development is commercial, and there are other EC uses nearby. The project will enhance public convenience with upgrades to both public sidewalks and boulevards adjacent to the property, plus providing landscaping along the building frontage. This project has compatible operating characteristics that are similar to those of other surrounding commercial uses. And finally, any traffic that will be generated by this project can be adequately managed on the surrounding infrastructure, including Brook Street, which is designed for high-volume auto travel and is a principal arterial. We will get to the motion, but here is language that we propose for a new condition of approval number 5, which is the applicant shall provide a pedestrian connection such as a concrete sidewalk or painted crosswalk from the employee parking area north of the drive-through and connecting to the employee entrance on the north side of the building, subject to review and approval of development services prior to building permit approval. If you wish to adopt this language, then we will have this motion, and it will refer to amended conditions of approval. So staff recommends approval of this project, an enterprise commercial conditional use in the C14 neighborhood in accordance with city zoning and based of the findings of fact in the staff report and subject to the amended conditions of approval if you choose to adopt it.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. With that, I will open the public hearing on this conditional use request. Anyone care to comment? Ms. Desha?
Good evening. My name is Kathy Desha. I live in Ward 5. I actually didn't know you were going to be talking about this tonight, but so since you are, I want to wish you all Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. A few meetings back, I can't remember which one, sorry, I talked about the traffic problems at Door and 39th in relationship to the Cowboy Flats subdivision, how we desperately need left turn signals at Door and 39th. Now, this will just add to that. So I'm begging you, whoever we need to talk to try and get that to happen. Those of us who live up on the South Hill wait 2.5 lights before we can turn left from 23rd onto 39th Street. And that's pretty much most of the day, other than early in the morning when there's not a lot of traffic. So with that being said, please also take into consideration that the turn arrows at Brooks and Brooks Door, the left turn arrows, they flash yellow. So they really need to be modified, however programmed, so that they actually turn green so that people can make a left, because in Brook Street, around 4:30 and beyond, the traffic gets backed up so far, people trying to get to Paradise Falls have a hard time getting across the street. People on Brooks block the street because they're waiting to get through, and it's really difficult to make a left turn lane. And I'll just speak for the senior citizens, since I have a couple of them, parents. These flashing yellow turn signals are confusing to them. So sometimes, and at first I didn't believe this when my mother told me, but there have been times where, and I can't recall the intersection, I'm sorry, I apologize for that, but the light was red, but the turn signal was flashing yellow, indicating you might be able to go. That's confusing for some of the older drivers, because if the main light is red, then it seems to be obvious that the cross traffic is going to be green. So that arrow should never be flashing yellow if the main light is red. So I don't know if that's a programming thing or something, but I actually did see it myself. So I'd like to see somebody look into that before there's a serious accident. So again, left turn signals, this project, as I went to many zoning meetings in the past, I understand it'll probably go through. It does not really fit with the character of this district. Most of the businesses are 2-story. This is a monster compared to the rest of them. Thanks.
Anyone else on the conditional use this evening?
Yours. My name's Bob Moore again. I'm not really familiar with that area too much. I would like to say, though, that if the approval of this and any subsequent work is going to cause payments by the taxpayer to South Mark Bank, that it not be approved. Thank you.
Anyone else this evening on the conditional use? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Are there questions from council? Mr. DeBari?
I have a question for Ms. Baker. I know we've had a couple of conversations, and maybe it'd be useful to put up the site plan of the building. A couple of conversations about how we address the circulation and traffic control and landscaping. We'll give Ms. Bentley a moment. Circulation, traffic control, and landscaping on the north boundary line of the property, and I'm wondering if you can share what you guys are thinking about how we can best address that.
Last Wednesday, Mr. DeBoy raised the question as to why there is no landscaping along this boundary, and we found that it is an interior, and so landscaping is required along public right-of-ways, and so here it is facing an adjacent lot. That lot is for sale, and the notion is that the parking lots may connect. If they do, then we will look at, again, the buffer that is between the parking lot that will be part of Stockman's project and what that new project will need to do in terms of landscaping there. We don't want to have, and this project doesn't allow, the cars to just go back and forth from those parking lots. There's a barrier now in terms of pin-down curbs, and we can look at what will happen with the new development to see what's appropriate to have there.
I'm sorry, yes, Mr. Parry.
So what I want to try to get a sense for is whether there's going to be a shared responsibility to between Stockman Bank and whoever owns that property to the north to identify the correct locations for ingress and egress, as well as how we just don't want people to be able to park on that north boundary and drive straight through, right? So is there another place where we might be able to address how the future of this north boundary is handled in terms of curb cuts or drive aisles, and so that it's not a free-for-all across the north part of the parking lot into some future unknown development?
I will defer to Mary McCrae on this question.
Mary McCrae, Development Services. So with Engineering Division, they will look at the development to the north, and there's a boundary line relocation being proposed, so they'll likely require conditions of approval with that boundary line relocation, that when the development happens, they would prefer, they like parking lots to connect so people don't have to drive out onto the road to go to the next business. Depending on what this development is, in C14, it could be a variety of commercial, it could also be residential. So depending on what it is, will determine whether they want that connection. So a condition of the boundary line relocation, this is one proposed location for that to happen, in which case, if there is a parking lot in this location, the drive-through would happen here, and these, you would have a similar situation to this if they had parking adjacent. And they have another proposed location, it's just off this slide over here, but that could be part of the boundary line relocation that Stockman Bank, depending on what happens to the north, will deal with that edge of their property line and their parking lot at that time.
So you feel confident that when the time comes, we can craft something that's safe and easily accessible and aesthetically pleasing, that it's not just going to wind up a sea of parking and, like I said, a free-for-all in terms of just driving through the parking area?
Yes, and engineering reviews all the boundary line relocations and proposes conditions at that time as well.
Further questions? Seeing none, Mr. DeBari?
Okay, they removed my proposed motion, but I think I can get it all here. So I would move to approve the enterprise commercial conditional use request in the C14 neighborhood commercial zoning district at 3601 and 3611 Brook Street, in accordance with the Missoula City Zoning Ordinance Title 20, sections 20.10.020D, 20.40.050, and 20.85.070, based on the findings of fact in the staff report and subject to the amended conditions of approval.
That motion is in order. Is there discussion on the motion? Mr. DeBari?
So it would be good if we could go back to that proposed condition number 5, And I would actually like to propose an amendment to this condition, and that is to just remove the words "or painted crosswalk." So I think what the intent would be to have a concrete sidewalk or crosswalk that goes between the parking area, crosses in front of the drive aisles for the bank teller, the drive-through bank teller aisles, and connects into the building. Just, I think it would be more permanent and provide clear direction and perhaps more safety for the people who are doing the crossing there, because it's just certainly more differentiated than painting that can go away over time.
And that is your motion, so you can amend in any way you like.
And that would be the way I would like to amend it.
All right, so that's the motion before the body. Is there discussion on the motion? Mr. Von Lossberg.
I'm going to support the motion. I just wanted to quickly respond to Ms. Deshaw. And I won't do it justice. The left turn arrows, as I understand it, are completely under MDT. I know there was extensive discussion about those. I was very interested in the ones at like on Orange Street onto Broadway, and I'd encourage you to contact them or work with the council rep for your ward in contacting them, maybe through Shane Stack, but thought I could quickly direct you on that point.
Mr. Barry?
I have some more information on that too. As Ms. Deshaw knows, we've talked briefly about this in the past, and Rick Larson, who's the communication shop supervisor, has actually been spending some time researching. That's why there's been silence on it, because as it turns out, when you want to change one thing, sometimes there's a cascading effect of other things that need to be changed. And so I have not yet talked to him, but well, I have talked to him a number of times, but I haven't talked to him after he had concluded his background research on this. So we are at the point where we can share more substantive information about how those traffic signals, or that traffic signal at Door and 39th might work. Part of the issue was if you go with a left turn arrow, that it could require a different kind of electronic controller for the signal, which would then mean additional work in the ground and replacement of traffic signal poles, which would then mean replacing the curb cuts with ADA accessible sidewalk ramps. And so we're just trying to figure out what the ramifications might be of concluding a project like that.
I'm going to pull us back a little bit to the conditional use. Any discussion on that? All right, seeing none, we've had a public hearing. We'll have a roll call vote.
Thanks. Is this on the amendment, or is the
It's the
original?
whole enchilada.
Okay, so it's the whole thing with the amendment to conditional number 5. All right. I'm clear. Hopefully everyone else is now. Becerra, please. Becerra votes yes. Bentley. Bentley votes yes. DeBari. DeBari votes yes. Heddle. Heddle votes yes. Hess. Hess votes yes. Jones. Jones votes yes. Marler. Marler votes yes. Von Lossberg. Von Lossberg votes yes. Wilkins. Wilkins votes yes. And Armstrong. Armstrong votes yes. Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 10 ayes and 2 absent.
And the conditional use is approved. Next, we'll take the 2 budget resolutions amending FY18. Ms. Griffin.
Hi, Lee Griffin, City Finance. I am going to go through, with Mayor's permission, both the 17 and the 18 budget amendments exhibits on the screen for you tonight. These exhibits that I will run through have already been posted in SIRE and were presented to the Administration and Finance Committee last week in detail, so I will give an overview of these rather than a detailed presentation on each line item. The FY17 budget amendments include items which are commonly termed housekeeping items, and that's because these have already come before council at various meetings, but they've not gone through the process to formally be added to the budget. So we must complete these amendments to close out the FY17 audit, which is happening right now. We must legally amend the budget to add appropriations or expenses to the budget. At the same time, we bring forward newly identified or otherwise unbudgeted revenues as an informational item. Many municipalities do that administratively, but we want to make sure that folks know what is occurring and when we have revenues that we get to add to the budget. In these exhibits, we show what types of revenues are being used to pay for the expenditures. Expenditures run down the left side of the sheets, and if a column on the right states fund balance as the source, that means we're using existing, previously budgeted revenues to pay for those expenditures. And if there are new revenues, those have one of those long accounting codes next to them and a description. Again, these FY17 items, the majority of them have come before City Council previously, so this is a bit of a retread for some of you folks. In the general fund and general fund special funds, we're recognizing playground equipment and Fort Missoula Regional Park expenses that are being paid for by the voted bond and impact fees approved by City Council and the Impact Fee Advisory Committee. We are recognizing 3 new columbariums purchased by the Cemetery Department with their existing fund balance. Next, we have special revenue funds. And from this point forward, you'll see quite a few smallish merchant fees and bank fees, and these are not, these specific dollars are not known, but they're estimated at the beginning of the budget process, so this is some housekeeping to true up those. The Employee Health Insurance Fund is using fund balance to pay for some of those. Our Cable Television Franchise Fund has an increase in expenses due to the increase in the contract that we have with MCAT, which was approved by City Council. We are renegotiating that franchise agreement with the cable provider in fiscal year 18. Building inspection had an increase in both expenses and revenues due to high permit activity. Street lighting had utility increases, and street maintenance paid for prior streets department work. We then had adjustments to a few grant funds. That were required by audit accounting adjustments necessary to comply with our schedule of federally funded awards. The Capital Improvement Program Fund had bank charges, and we issued $1.75 million in capital leases to pay for equipment purchases. Debt service funds are being amended for service fees and the addition of the Hillview Way SID debt payments. That financing went through City Council and was not added to the budget at that time. The next capital improvement section is showing the activity for many of those CIP or capital improvement program multi-year projects that are presented during the budget, as well as recognizing some revenues for grants, donation, and bond proceeds. There is an item for the art park there. I just want to make note of it, as in the Administration and Finance Committee last Wednesday, City Council has asked us to refer that item as a discussion item in January after this budget is taken care of. In our enterprise funds, we are recognizing 6 days of water utility operations, as well as some acquisition costs. There's also $343,000 of revenue for those days. The expenditures are higher, and those are being paid for by the bonds that we issued for the acquisition of the system, and that is simply a timing issue. The water revenues from the operating the system pay for the operation in its entirety. There isn't anything else funding the water utility. I just want to let folks know that. The Aquatics Fund is being amended for year-end accounting for depreciation and some differences in their supply, salary, and bank fees. And the final FY17 amendment is net zero, same amount of expenses and revenues for the TBID that was captured incorrectly in the FY17 budget. I'll move on to FY18. There are a lot of very small changes into the neighborhood council budget based on population and postage increases. All of those items net up to around $400. There is one full-time help desk position for our IT department, which is being funded by the water utility, as we recognize the increased need for IT support for those 30+ employees. There is a transfer of some municipal court revenues from their fiduciary bank account, which normally is just a pass-through account where surcharges are paid and then sent off to the state of Montana. The previous municipal court judge and administration had charged us a small fee to some folks who were doing payment plans, and when our current municipal court staff were doing their reconciliations, they recognized that and realized that this was revenues that could be transferred over to the city general fund. We are recognizing the expenses and some grant revenue for bringing the Reaching Home program and 10-year plan into the city budget. We are recognizing Road and Park District revenues into the general fund. These are Road and Park District assessments that were approved during the FY18 budget process, but transferring them from those districts to cover those staff in the general fund was not captured. You'll see an offsetting amount there, so this is primarily a bit of accounting. In the general fund specials, we're recognized reimbursed expenses for the county portion of the Fort Missoula Regional Park maintenance work. So this is $162,000 worth of expenses that are being paid for in their entirety by the county. We are recognizing some lease revenue from property acquired from MRL on Johnson Street. There are some commercial renters in that property. Road and Park District offsetting is being shown under special revenue funds. We're recognizing some gas tax funds for street maintenance materials. There was a new request during the FY18 budget to increase that materials budget. And then in 3 grant funds, CDBG, Home, and Brownfields, these all receive federal grant monies that are awarded after our budget process closes. So this amendment trues up those grants. We are recognizing expenses for new positions to be filled in the water utility fund. Now, actually, one of these is a promotion. 2 of these positions had previously been filled in the water utility, but had been held open for a long period of time. As we've been operating the system, we've realized that they need to fill that, and this amendment takes care of that. There's the transfer out to cover IT folks. There was a $5,000 increase to the health program that was discussed during the budget. And there, in the employee benefit fund, this is a bit of accounting here, I'm sorry. We transfer benefits to cover those the benefits that get paid out in that particular fund. This simply was not shown in that fund. It's shown in each department's budget. So that went through that process and was approved. This is the other side of the equation that was not shown. We want to recognize Missoula Parking Commission new requests, which were approved by the Parking Commission's board and City Council during the 18 budget presentations, and were not added into the final calculation. And that concludes the amendments for both 17 and 18. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. At this point, I will open the public hearing on these budget amendments for fiscal year 17 and 18. Anyone care to comment on the resolutions? All right, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Are there questions from council members? Seeing none, we have had a public hearing. We'll have a roll call vote.
Okay, so we're going to have a vote on both of the resolutions.
We need a motion.
I think we need a motion, don't
sorry,
we? I'm like, did we have a motion?
I
was
so excited by the lack of questions
working on
that I
some
just
other
got
things
carried
over
away.
here. Yeah.
Who fills in for Ms. Cares? Ms. Heddall, thank you.
I thought you were going to deny me my last time of making a motion. Well, here we are. I recommend the first part is adopt a resolution amending the annual appropriations for the city of Missoula, Montana as set forth in the fiscal year 2017 budget that increases the total city budget by $22,239,009 in order to recognize grants received during the fiscal year and incorporate ongoing construction projects and bond issues with related debt service that were carried forward from fiscal year 2016. The second motion, adopt a resolution amending the annual appropriations for the city of Missoula, Montana as set forth in the fiscal year 2018 budget that increases the total city budget appropriations of $2,841,285 in order to recognize revenues and expenses identified within the first quarter, fiscal year 2018 that were not identified or adopted within the initial fiscal year 2017 budget.
Thank you, Ms. Heddall, for that brilliantly delivered motion. We have had a public hearing. If there's no discussion on the motion, we'll have a I'm sorry, Mr. Von Losberg.
I support the motions. I just wanted to thank Lee for mentioning the referral in January with regard to the art park. I also wanted to mention, since we went through this in considerable more detail in committee, that the section relative to the water utility, as she mentioned, shows some operations during an 8-day period, and as we confirmed during committee, these expenses and revenues are completely consistent with the pro forma under which we acquired the system, and I think it's just valuable to note that. Thanks.
Further discussion? All right, seeing none, we will have a roll call vote.
Just a point of order, although brilliantly delivered, we have led Ms. Hedall astray slightly in her motion on the fiscal year 2017 budget. The finance director has pointed out to me that the last, we're carrying forward related debt service and construction projects to fiscal year 18 rather than 16. So that's the correction to the motion. Sorry, Annalise. The other one was perfect.
Ms.
Thanks.
Hedall?
As noted.
Oh, is there more? Did I miss more?
But wait, there's
Okay.
more.
Ms. Griffin?
We have another point of order. Sorry.
My apologies, that it was the second motion, Marty, actually, that were not identified, adopted within the initial fiscal year 2018 budget. The first motion amends the 2017 budget. The second motion amends the 2018 budget. I'm very sorry.
Ms. Hedall?
As noted.
Fair enough. Now, without further hesitation, we'll have a roll call vote.
Okay, on both resolutions, Bentley votes yes. Dabari votes yes. Hedall votes yes. Hess votes yes. Jones votes yes. Marlar votes yes. Von Lossberg votes yes. Wilkins votes yes. Armstrong votes yes. Becerra votes yes. Would any of you like to change your vote? It's 10 ayes and 2 absent.
And the motions are approved. Our final public hearing this evening is on an ordinance amending our rules for parking for camping purposes. And our staff report this evening comes from Mr. Haynes.
Okay.
It didn't work.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, minor technical issues. For the record, Mike Haynes, Development Services Director, and we are here for the public hearing as it relates to parking for camping purposes. So the proposed ordinance changes today are the result of a collaborative effort by staff from the Police Department, the City Attorney's Office, Development Services, and the Code Compliance section of Development Services, and the City County Health Department. All of these groups are responding to an increasing number of complaints by residents and business owners that RVs are being parked in city right-of-way and used as living quarters. The specific complaints that we receive relate to public health impacts, primarily because there are no obvious provisions for waste disposal, public nuisances because there are occasions when these individuals that are taking this living in RVs are aggressive towards the neighbors who ask them questions or make complaints. And of course, we're always concerned about the safe movement of traffic as it relates to pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles when you have large vehicles parked in the right-of-way for any length of time.
So this is impacting residents' desire for safe, clean, livable neighborhoods and business operators' desire to maintain viable commercial areas and viable businesses. Just a reminder that RVs can legally be parked and occupied in RV parks and campgrounds, both in the city and the county. And obviously these are facilities where power, potable water and waste services are provided. So it provides a sanitary living condition. So to be clear, the proposed changes are not substantive, but are clarifications that will help the city as it pertains particularly to law enforcement and legal action. Camping in the city right-of-way is not permitted now, and that doesn't change under the revised ordinance. The revised ordinance was focused specifically on camping in RVs because that's the problem that we've specifically identified. There were some questions about that, about why it was talking about RVs particularly, but I would remind you that camping or sleeping overnight on public property in general remains prohibited through a section of Title 12. And here's that specific language in Title 12 that talks generally about camping and sleeping overnight in parks, right-of-way, parking lots, under bridges, in boulevards, etc. So there's your more general vagrancy ordinance that it remains unchanged. The proposed changes are made necessary by a very few individuals who refuse to comply with city laws. Our compliance staff and police officers always seek voluntary compliance. In the vast majority of instances, 99+% compliance is forthcoming. But in rare instances, the city must resort to law enforcement and legal action to achieve compliance and to resolve citizen complaints. I just want to emphasize that nothing in these changes are intended to be punitive. It's simply to make sure that if and when we have to go to court, that our attorneys can rely on the specific ordinance language as written. So the proposed revised ordinance was presented to Public Works Committee on November 29th, and preliminary adoption on first reading was on December 4th, with the public hearing set for tonight. Here is the ordinance itself, which is unchanged since the one that you looked at Public Works, with the exception of the one change requested from 3 days to 5 days for parking in the right-of-way with permission of the adjacent property owner. There have been questions about citations and fines. The penalty for a violation of the city ordinance is a $100 fine, and technically each day is a separate violation. And while we have only issued, to the best of my knowledge, citations and fines have only been issued to a couple of people with regards to urban camping, this is an important incentive to get people to comply, or to get people to court to address the violations that have come up. So I am realizing I don't have the full recommended motion here, so you might want to refer to the agenda tonight, but the recommended motion is to adopt the revision to Title 10 of City Code to more specifically address regulations related to occupying RVs in the city right-of-way. And I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Haynes. With that, I will open the public hearing. Would anyone care to comment on revisions to the ordinance this evening? Sir.
Good evening. My name is Alex Strickland. I live on the 500 block of West Alder, immediately to the east of Little McCormick Park, just a few blocks from here. For the last three and a half years, I've walked my dog in that park daily. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that there's only a handful of days in those years that my wife or myself haven't done at least a partial lap. Upon reading the revised ordinance, in some ways it seems like it would be a welcome update. This summer we saw a drastic change in that park from occasional short-term campers as people move through to the arrival of semi-permanent residents ringing Little McCormick, some in cars, some in vans, some in buses, and many RVs. There were times where easily a dozen people were living in the park. We've heard from police officers and park staff that regulars there know the city code as it relates to time duration, and sure enough, every few days vehicles would creep a few feet in one direction or another, sometimes under their own power, sometimes not, to avoid running afoul of those limits. My concern today is that the language update here seems to neither strengthen the time restraints nor alternatives for enforcement. Dropping motor vehicles for the more specific recreational vehicles seems as though it could have the unintended consequence of worsening the problem. Some of that was well explained there, I think. Again, I support the intent of the ordinance to prevent people from keeping long-term residents in RVs in a public right-of-way, but suggest that the language be carefully considered to continue to include all types of motor vehicles to more fully address the problem that we've seen in our neighborhood. I would urge the council to carefully consider these potential unintended consequences to the proposed language of the update and to consider what can be done to connect people to the resources they need while maintaining public spaces for their intended use. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Anyone else this evening? All right, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Are there questions from council? Ms. Jones?
Thanks for the presentation tonight. And this is a complicated issue because we have a lot of homeless people in Missoula also that we're trying to make life work for them. But I just wanted to ask you just to expand a little bit. I understand that the police voluntarily ask for voluntary compliance, that just try and work with the situation. But could you expand a little bit on the fact that this is also complaint-based? In other words, if there's a situation where there isn't a problem, this is not really something that the city is putting a lot of energy and resources into. It's really the problem situations and that it's complaint-driven.
Yes, thank you for the question. I should have mentioned that. So both our code compliance staff as well as police officers only address issues that are raised by citizens, typically by property owners. Folks are parking outside of their home or adjacent to their property. And that's when we receive those complaints, then we address those complaints. But we do not have staff that are driving around town looking for people in violation. It's simply a direct response to a formal complaint from a resident.
Further questions? Mr. Von Lossberg?
Thanks. Mike, can you just confirm, the amendment that we made in committee to 5 days was to bring it into consistency, I believe, with state law? Do you recall?
I recall the discussion. 5 days relates to a vehicle any vehicle that remains on a public right-of-way without being moved. The 3 days, that was just a choice of City Council, but I think that was the intent, was to make it consistent with a different regulation.
Thanks.
Further questions? Mr. DeBari?
And just as a point of clarification, that's 5 days with essentially the consent of the adjacent property owner, correct?
Precisely.
Right.
Mr. Nugent?
The 5-day period that was referenced in state law has nothing to do with consent by the abutting property owner.
Okay. Further questions? All right. Seeing none, Mr. Hess.
Thank you. I move we adopt an ordinance amending Missoula Municipal Code Title 10, Chapter 10.22, Section 10.22190, entitled Parking for Camping Purposes, clarifying requirements for parking recreational vehicles for camping purposes on a city street. And I'd like to speak to the motion.
Mr. Hess?
This is a difficult issue, and I think that we're on a path to giving our code compliance and our police some tools to deal with some very problematic and very isolated incidents. I want to be very clear that it is not my intent. It has never been my intent and never will be my intent to do anything that criminalizes homelessness or poverty, and I don't believe that we're doing that in this ordinance. We are establishing a way to deal with a public nuisance, and I expect the ordinance to be applied in that manner, and so I'm supportive at this time.
Further discussion, Mr. Wilkins?
So I'm in support of the ordinance, but you know, a person living in their RV, they're one step from probably being homeless. And you're asking them to move, which they shouldn't be on the street. But I think we have things in our government that we could do to the ones that want to be in compliance. We have places they could go. And one is the fairgrounds. And Emily shakes her head no, but the fairgrounds does have RV hookups. So, you know, even if it's a short amount of time, that they figure out what they can do. And these are the ones that are going to be in compliance, not the ones that are, you know, are just adamant they can be where they are and do what they do. I've seen incidents of sewage and black water hitting the gutter, going down the storm drain, and we can't have that. Just absolutely can't have that. But there should be some way that we can address this with the ones that want to try to do better. And this ordinance is good for the ones that don't give a darn and just won't comply. So I'm in favor of the ordinance.
Ms. Marler?
I agree with a lot of the statements already made by Mr. Hess and Mr. Wilkins. It's complicated, and my goal is not to criminalize homelessness. Unfortunately, this has come up because of, that I know of, there's been two issues in Ward 6 where it seemed like it was becoming dangerous. People were afraid, and the police and the compliance officers didn't feel that they had enough tools to resolve the situation. That's just in my neighborhood in the last couple of years, and I'm aware of another similar situation near downtown residential neighborhood. And this is definitely not an issue of the police officers, the compliance staff going around and hassling people. It's where people feel like they need some help in keeping their neighborhood safe, and I'm really sorry that it has come to this. And I want to thank Mr. Haynes and the staff for working on this. I know this was something that they've been collaborating on between city and county government and within different agencies, and it's just not easy. And I hope that as a community we can keep working on the homeless issue, and it's very tempting to start talking about the closure of trailer parks around town too, and that the outdated or the older mobile homes that people are not allowed to move, and there's going to be more of those. And so it's just a big problem, and it's not all going to be taken care of in one bite, but I hope that this can help with some very specific situations.
Mr. Van Osberg.
Thanks. I agree with virtually all the sentiments expressed already, particularly Ms. Marler mentioning it's not going to be taken care of with one bite. First off, I want to recognize Mr. Strickland's comments and concerns. I actually am partly in support of this because of the fact that it does narrow down to the recreational vehicles, and I realize that may be a cause for concern relative to the vehicles, but I would mention that I think we have an obligation, and I'm committed to following up. We're going to be doing mid-year budget reviews, department reviews before we know it. I'm very interested in hearing from the police department and code compliance about how this is working, as well as from citizens where they see potentially gaps or issues. But I actually appreciate that it does narrow the scope down to the vehicle, the RVs. I wasn't comfortable, given some of the comments expressed earlier about homelessness, with the broader scope of what existed before. So this is not a new ordinance. We're revising an existing ordinance here. And I think we have an obligation to follow up and see what how it's being used. I'm committed to making sure that happens. And as Mr. Wilkins mentioned, seeing where we might be able to find some help or solutions to folks who are being affected in an adverse way that we don't want to see happen. So, but I am going to support the ordinance as it's been presented.
Ms. Brock on the motion.
Thanks. I support the sentiments that have come up. I just wanted to clarify that the fairgrounds does not have RV parking for semi-permanent residents. People that park their RVs at the fairgrounds are related to specific events, and they have contracts to be there and proper insurance. In terms of emergencies like the wildfires this summer, that's a unique situation, and we work with the federal government and the Office of Emergency Planning to deal with that. So I just wanted to make sure that folks out there knew that it's not permitted to park your RV on the fairgrounds. And sorry, I should have clarified that I am wearing my fairgrounds director hat. It's a little awkward, but just wanted to say that on the record.
Further discussion? Seeing none, we've had a public hearing. We'll have a roll call vote.
Okay, on the ordinance, Dabari. Dabari votes yes. Hedal. Hedal votes yes. Hess. Hess votes yes. Jones. Jones votes yes. Marler. Marler votes yes. Von Lossberg. Von Lossberg votes yes. Wilkins. Wilkins votes yes. Armstrong. Armstrong votes yes. Sorry. Becerra. Becerra votes yes. And Bentley. Bentley votes yes. Would any of you like to change your vote? It's 10 ayes and 2 absent.
And the ordinance is approved. We have no more public hearings this evening. Again, without objection, I'd like to move things around a little bit and hold communications from the mayor and council comments until after committee reports. Seeing no objection, we'll move on then to committee reports. Items listed here weren't approved unanimously in council standing committees. The chairperson of that committee will make a motion reflecting that committee's action and will invite comment on these items. We will begin with land use and planning. And we actually have a couple there. We have item number 10 from the consent agenda, and we have the overlay in the historic or the university district. And Mr. Dabari, you may take those in whatever order you would prefer.
Okay, well, we will pick up with item 10 from the consent agenda. And the motion as written is to approve the gasoline and fuel sales conditional use in the C14 neighborhood commercial zoning district at 2350 Reserve Street in accordance with the city zoning ordinance, Title 20, Sections 20.10.020D, 20.40.060, and 20.85.070 based on the findings of fact in the staff report and subject to the conditions of approval as amended in the Land Use and Planning Committee on December the 13th, 2017, and shown in Exhibit 1.
That motion is in order. Is there discussion on the motion? Ms. Becerra.
I would like to make a motion to amend condition of approval number 8 to reincorporate condition of approval section D that deals with dynamic display signs.
Okay. We have a motion to amend. Discussion on the motion. Mr. Hess.
I'd like to voice my support for the motion, which is a reversal of my opinion at our committee meeting. But I reflected on this a fair amount, and I think one of my concerns is that our conditional use process is be predictable, be consistent, and provide a level of consistent expectations for developers and applicants for conditional use approvals. After learning that the conditional use gas station that we reviewed last year also had a prohibition on such signs, and given the growing body of research that these signs are present safety concerns and have other negative impacts, I'm all for adding that condition back in. I'll support it.
Further discussion on the motion to amend? Ms. Marlar?
Me too.
Any other discussion on the motion to amend? Mr. DeBari?
I'm also going to support the motion, and I just want to be clear that the applicant still has an opportunity to do additional signage for the gas station that is not in conflict with this, and I think that that's appropriate given that the request is associated with this gas station, and as Mr. Hess had mentioned, that it's consistent with a precedent that we actually a former council set a couple of years ago, and I think it's appropriate in this case as well.
Further discussion on the motion to amend? Seeing none, anyone in the audience here to comment on the motion to amend? Yes, sir.
Craig Schaefer with Morrison Merrily. We represented the applicant in the conditional use permit application. And just wanted to, it probably doesn't need any more clarifying, but just wanted to clarify that the sign that the applicants are hoping to propose is the equivalent of the message boards where they take the long pole and put different letters up there to communicate cereal sales or different events that may be going on the Rose Hours property, and not necessarily the flashing dynamic display that I think we're talking about. Also, the applicant, the Rose Hour Supermarket guys, pointed out to me today that in other cities there were concerns about the flashing lights and the changing. They were able to slow down I think they called it the refresh rate of those signs, so it was more similar to that static message board display. Still allowed them to do what they wanted to do in communicating those messages to the public. And then lastly, I believe the town pump on Brook Street fell underneath the Midtown Neighborhood Plan, or I'm probably not calling that plan correctly, but there's a definite different planning aspect to Brook Street in that area than there is on Reserve Street proper. Just wanted to clarify both of those issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. Anyone else this evening on the motion to amend? All right. Seeing none, we'll have a voice vote on the motion to amend. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed? Motion to amend carries. Back to the main motion as amended. Further discussion or amendments? Mr. Von Lossberg.
I'm supportive of the motion with the amendment. I just wanted to thank Mr. Schaefer and the project representatives, the owners, for a very productive committee meeting. I think that the net result of what we're proposing to do here is a dramatic improvement to that area, and I know that there's been significant public comment focused around just the addition of another gas station. I think when I personally am loath to restrict a use that the private property owner there can do, and I think we're doing this in a way where, as I said, the result overall with all of the elements of the project will be a vast improvement. I think we'll actually eliminate some of the congestion at nearby facilities as well. So I think it's positive.
Further discussion? Mr. DeBari?
I also want to thank Mr. Schaefer and the folks from Rosars. I think we did have a productive conversation about this, and I really feel like we've made good strides into improving the project, yet also allowing the applicant to, as Mr. Von Lossberg said, actualize a legal use on that property. And I do really also appreciate the conversation that we had about improving the parking lot. I know that that we're going to be making some minor improvements at this point in time, but I do appreciate the fact that the folks at Rosars understand that this parking lot has some deficiencies, and with other changes that might take place with businesses such as the windshield repair and the coffee, I don't know what those things are called. Kiosk, thank you. That we can continue that conversation and continue to improve the safety for pedestrians and motorists and bicyclists in that parking lot, and continue to improve the aesthetic and function of that property. Be supporting the motion.
Mr. Wilkins on the motion.
So I'm not in favor of it, and I'll be voting no on it. My biggest reason, I think, is for pedestrian safety, trying to get from the pump into the store if they have a major problem or something they need to address. You have to go right across the where they turn in off of South Avenue. And let me tell you, I've tried to get across there a few times myself, and it's a dangerous situation. And I haven't really seen a fix to that yet. So, and the right in and right out, I still have a problem with. So I'm just not going to vote for it.
Ms. Becerra.
I too want to echo what everyone has said about the willingness of the developer to work with us. I know we spent a great deal of time talking about safety, especially inside the perimeter of the property, the parking lot, and all of that. So the amended motion, I think it's only going to enhance that safety for the customers and the public in general. So I thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote on the motion as amended.
Okay, on the conditional use, I think we start this round with Heddle. Heddle votes yes. Hess votes yes. Jones votes yes. Marlar votes yes. Van Lossberg votes yes. Wilkins votes no. Armstrong votes yes. Becerra votes yes. Bentley votes yes. And Dabari votes yes. Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 9 ayes, 1 nay, and 2 absent.
And the conditional use is approved. Mr. Dabari.
Once again, it's the OUP show.
Hard to believe.
It is hard to believe, isn't it? It's shocking every week. Okay, so the next motion is to direct staff to write space and bulk ordinance language to preserve historic building size and patterns in the University Historic District as described in the attached University Neighborhood Compatibility Standards document, which will allow for mindful growth and change and positively influence housing size and proportionality relative to lot size, while not disincentivizing the thoughtful development in the University District neighborhood. Distribute the draft zoning amendments for agency comment, hold a planning board public hearing, and then return to City Council for final consideration. And may I speak to it?
Mr. Dabari.
I want to thank Ms. Jones for her initiative of working with University Neighborhood District and all the work that citizens that live in that neighborhood put into this as well. As I've said in the past, I don't necessarily share all of the concerns that have been voiced to the extent they've been voiced, but I am supportive of continuing the public conversation in this regard. And I think it will be beneficial to broaden the audience, to hear from agencies and other members of the public and from the planning board to provide some thoughtful consideration of this and how council might try to address what Ms. Jones is trying to advance here.
Ms. Marlar?
Like I said in committee, I appreciate that Ms. Jones has been working on this and spent a lot of time with the neighbors and the staff, but I just don't support it. The only part of it that I support at all is the idea of loss of housing units, like scratching 2 houses to build 1 giant house is mainly a problem because it's less housing. I remember when I first got on city council a long time ago, there was discussion of a no scraping ordinance, which I don't think got traction, but there's been situations in my neighborhood where a house has gotten scratched and then 2 houses have gone up, and
It's a different kind of situation. That's not what we're talking about, but I'm concerned about the loss of housing to build fewer, bigger houses, but with all respect to Ms. Jones, I'm not going to vote in support of moving this forward.
Ms. Bent?
I appreciate Ms. Jones's work on this. I think it is a completely reasonable and conservative approach to a complicated issue. I appreciate the tone of the neighborhood and the dialogue, which sometimes this stuff comes forward around neighborhoods and it's reactionary and it's about, you know, some project that's happening. And I like that this really is taking a thoughtful approach and taking things slowly and looking at you know what it is about the university neighborhood that we want to preserve and what's great about it. I also think that it can be a template for other neighborhoods. I've heard some other council people say they don't think it's fair that this is happening in the university neighborhood and not their neighborhood, to which I would challenge them to put in the work that Ms. Jones has done with the neighborhood and lead that effort. I think that she's really done a great job paving the way. So I wholeheartedly support this. I think the neighborhood supports it. And I think that it, obviously, the comments that Ms. Marler made about, you know, scraping 2 houses to build 1 are important also. So thanks for putting in all the legwork. I appreciate it, and the neighborhood appreciates it, and the ward appreciates it. I'm supporting it.
Ms. Jones?
Thanks for the comments tonight. I just wanted to point out that Tom Zavitz has patiently sat here all night for the last thing on the item. So if anyone does have any questions, he can answer that. But I think we covered things mostly in the committee meeting, and it's on to the next level to have as John said, a broader discussion. And I think these are actually some very flexible tools that I think we're going to be having a lot more of these discussions in the future as we are looking at our growth policy and infill. And this is a good start to articulate how we're going to approach some of these issues. And it's generating from this neighborhood. But I think these are very adaptable tools. So I look forward to seeing how it unfolds.
Further discussion? Seeing none, anyone in the audience care to comment on the question? Come to the microphone, sir. Would you like to comment? You need to come to the microphone and identify yourself, please, sir.
Scott Sable, I live here in Missoula. It is further discussion. It's an interesting concept, and I totally get it. At the same time, there's a different perspective on how life should be, and I think that it shouldn't be retrospective on people's thoughts on, boom, you should be this, but it should be that. And I don't know, man, I'm just a little tired of it should be this way when it could be that way. And that's all I gotta say about it. And I don't think that's actually very going forth towards a great perspective on how I think life should be, but I think life should be more of a transient thing where you should pick what you want, and that's my take on it.
Well, I appreciate that, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, and
Anyone?
that's cool that you can be able to come up and voice that.
Glad you were able to. Anyone else this evening on the question?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I did good, but what did I do good on? I mean, what did I do good on?
Gentlemen, you're welcome to have a conversation out in the hallway.
But I mean,
we got some business to do here.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you, though.
Yep.
Anyone else on the question? All right. Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
On the sending the University District Compatibility Standard Zoning Overlay forward, I think we start this round with Hess. Hess votes yes. Jones votes yes. Marlar? Marlar votes yes. Von Lossberg? Von Lossberg votes yes. Wilkins? Wilkins votes yes. Armstrong? Armstrong votes yes. Becerra? Becerra votes yes. Bentley? Bentley votes yes. DeBari? DeBari votes yes. Heddle? Heddle votes yes. Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 10 ayes and 2 absent.
We had 10 ayes.
I think I said, did I miss somebody on the roll call?
I would like to change. I got distracted or something.
How did that happen? I can't imagine. So Marlar is changing her yes vote to a no, and now we have 9 ayes, 1 nay, and 2 absent. Does that, anybody else want to change your vote? All right.
All right, that sounds right to me. Wanted to get that last one in for you, Marilyn. And the motion is approved. We have no additional committee reports. We'll move on to comments from the mayor. Thank you for your indulgence as this meeting has ebbed and flowed considerably. Maybe a little more flowing than ebbing along the way, but there you go. So it is my pleasure this evening to acknowledge the service of our retiring council members this evening, and we get to do that in the form of these plaques recognizing years of service. We'll start this evening with Councilman Wilkins, with whom I first became acquainted as he involved himself pretty tirelessly in neighborhood issues. John came up through the neighborhood council system and did all the hard work that's associated with not only citizen advocacy and learning our system, which is complex and ever evolving. And from there, John ran for the Missoula City Council, was elected in 2005, and has served since 2006. And I have watched John over the years be a man of principle without being necessarily stubborn. I've seen him be a man of compassion and kindness in ways that you might not expect from a gruff kid from the gritty streets of Great Falls who made Montana home. I have seen him engage in charitable work that not only served people on the ground, but offered great symbolic, I think, messages for our community and showed great respect for people who have served our country and our community. John, I am grateful for your service. I am a better man for having served with you, and I will miss you. Thank you for everything. And that, sir, is yours. My friend Annalise Heddall, ladies and gentlemen, is engaging in a process we call one and done. But her one has been one of impact. Annalise brought to this body a sense of humor and charm and intelligence and a perspective that sometimes goes missing as we delve into the details of governance and the occasional bureaucracy that's associated with that. Annalise is a person who will cut to the chase. She will represent what she believes to be reason and common sense, and she does that in a way that is respectful and a little bit sneaky. She is also a person who will listen to anybody talk about anything, and she will do it. She will do it openly and with sincerity, and at the end of those conversations, she will let you know where she stands, again, respectfully and sincerely. She is a delight. She will be missed. She will continue her service on the Missoula Economic Partnership Board, where I get to spend some time with her, and I am grateful for that, grateful for what she's done for this council and for our community, and I will miss you as well, Ms. Hedall. That's it. I met Emily Brock when she was working for Missoula's flagship program. I served on the board of that program. And for those of you not familiar, it's an after-school program that operates in Missoula County Public Schools. And Emily, in her youth, demonstrated remarkable energy. All that's gone away, clearly, and we're left with this calm soul now. But in those days, it was evident that Emily was a believer in social justice. She believed that everyone deserved an opportunity to live well, be well, and do well in our community, and she put those principles to action by helping kids at probably the most difficult time in many of their lives, and she made those lives better. She then went on to engage in land use planning, and the private sector apparently did not cure her of that, and she found that she was willing and able to engage in public service. She ran for city council in Ward 3, as determined as any soul I know to do that. She left no T uncrossed nor any I undotted. She conducted herself with dignity, and to watch her serve Ward 3, which has some diversity and some specific issues and some challenges, I watched her engage in dealing with those issues in a way that I found remarkably fair and open-minded, and she was willing to listen to and work for folks with whom she might not necessarily share an opinion or an idea or a hope, but she represented those constituents with smarts and compassion and intelligence, and she got stuff done for the ward. If there's anybody I would trust to try to figure out the fairgrounds, turns out it's Emily, and I'm glad she's doing that. I regret that she is leaving council in the same way that I regret all members are leaving council. But once again, I am a better person for having known her, having served with her, and having enjoyed her help, kindness, and friendship. There are people at this table to whom I believe I owe my life, and she is among them. So, Emily, there's a plaque. Okay, now we're done. Oh, one more as it turns out. Oh, you all get your carriers as well in case you don't want these to get dented or scratched. even though we tried to get scratch and dent resistant plaques. Last but not least, I have had the pleasure, as I had with Mr. Wilkins, of serving with Marilyn Marler since 2006. She now wraps up a dozen years as a city council member representing Ward 6, and she has done that with grace and courage, and one of the joys of this job is seeing people evolve and learn and change. And Marilyn started out evolved and has evolved even more over time. I have seen her go from serving as a committee chair to president of this council, and her work as council president has been, in my opinion, nothing short of remarkable. Leadership isn't easy. Leadership among your peers can be even more challenging, and she has addressed issues not only on council but in the community with considerable fortitude. This business ain't for the weak of heart, and she is not weak of heart. She is, however, among the most compassionate souls I know, and if there's a person on this body who can make an argument for her case, support her vote and her position while showing nothing but respect for folks with whom she may not agree, it is Marilyn Marler. I have been amazed watching her articulate why she's doing what she's doing while acknowledging the pain or the disagreement or the hurt or the disappointment of folks in this audience and those who may be watching in television or living with the consequences of those actions in the community. She is the epitome of a public servant, and I regret that she is stepping away from this body. But I will be glad to have a friend in the Montana legislature. I have no doubt that Marilyn will bring the level of service that she brought to this body, to that body, and that can't be anything but a good thing. And again, as a friend, I can tell you that Marilyn, during a very difficult time in my life, showed up here, did the work that needed to be done, left me feeling nothing but confident that I could concentrate on taking care of my personal issues, and in doing so, I also believe helped save my life, and I will be eternally grateful for that and for her, and thanks, Marilyn. And now we will move on to general comments from council members. We'll start with Ms. Jones.
I will keep it very short, but I wanted to say thank you so much to the 4 retiring members. I have learned from each and every one of you. It's a steep learning curve on city council that I don't think it ever ends, frankly. And the tidbits I got from all of you in terms of how to deal with people, how to message things, how to analyze things. Thank you so much. And special thank you to Emily for being a great Ward 3 co-counselor. I've just learned so much from all of you. So thank you and good luck in your next endeavors.
Ms. Hill.
Okay, so I started it with, as the token council crier, that I would not start by crying right out of the gate, but this is going to be tough, so don't hold your breath. Thank you, Missoula, for believing, goodness gracious, for believing enough in a young, bright-eyed, not so bright-eyed anymore, it's actually they're quite red, and maybe naive woman to represent you on an amazing council. It's been a heck of a ride, and although I have not made big policy changes, I listened, This is ridiculous. I'm sorry. I tried to help where I could and made the best decisions I could. Maybe not always every Missoulian's choice, but I promise you I put my heart into every decision. Thank you, Dick Haynes, for encouraging me to take on this monumental job. When I first met Mr. Haynes, we talked about me running, and he said, regardless of what you decide to do, you will forever be changed. And he was right. So thank you, Dick. I love you very much. I must thank my family and my husband for supporting me when I came up with this harebrained idea, and then putting my kids up, and for my kids putting up with me leaving every Monday. And all the time I spent on the phone with constituents or neighborhood meetings, whatever. It takes a village. Thank you, Mayor Engen, for so many reasons, but most importantly for your leadership. You're an inspiration to me and so many members in this community. And as I tell people, you love Missoula more than I or anyone else ever could. You commit to the city every single day, and you have my utmost respect and admiration. And Jim Nugent, please know that I will miss your thorough, all caps emails. You're a good man, and you've served the city well. And Marty, you're an amazing asset to the city. Thank you for being better than Google, plus you have a soothing microphone voice. My council members, there are so many things to say. Many thank yous for what you do. You listen even when you're tired. You listen at a friend's barbecue. You listen when you're just trying to get your darn grocery shopping done. I appreciate you. But most importantly, it is my honor to serve with you. You are some of the most kind, thoughtful, and hands down most intelligent group that I've ever been able to sit next to. And as council members, you work hard and you make unpopular choices. You take initiatives and believe in Missoula more than most. Just know you have a very special chapter in my book of life. This is where I said insert crying to be funny, but it's too late. So I think it's best quoted from the musical Wicked in the song For Good. I do believe I've been changed for the better, and because I knew you, I have been changed for the good.
Ms. Morley.
That is hard to follow, Annalee is, and I'm an empathy crier, so I want to start off before I talk about, before I have some parting thank yous. My husband works at Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and there are some very wonderful people over there who don't always get name recognition in the community. But my friends Bob Wiesner and Christy Du Bois at Fish, Wildlife, and Parks both are retiring this month. Bob worked on urban wildlife conflicts here in Missoula, so if you had a mountain lion or a bear issue, you probably had Bob Wiesner working with you on that. He's a great guy. And Christy, whose husband was here from the Grant Creek neighborhood, was one of our local non-game wildlife biologists who just has an infectious love of all animals, no matter how small and overlooked they might be by a lot of people. Christy just loved them and was good at getting other people to love them too. So I want to thank Bob and Christy for their service. They did a lot of good work for Montana's animals and people. Housekeeping. My last act as City Council President is to appoint all 4 of the incoming City Council members to all of the City Council committees. That way you can start off on January 3rd, participating in all the committees. Thank you, Marty Rebine, for reminding me to do that. You never forget all those important details. Mayor Engen, thank you for your kind comments, and everybody who's on City Council now. And for the last 12 years that I served with, which is actually a lot of people, a lot of really interesting and smart people, and all the incoming City Council people, thank you for your service. I really enjoyed getting to know you, and I've learned a lot. I'm really grateful to the people of Ward 6 for electing me a 3 times and giving me this opportunity to participate in the community this way. It's been wonderful, and I have a lot of emotions right now, and thank you all again.
Ms. Becerra.
As some of you know, I started working at what used to be known as OPG, and I remember coming to this council with a lot of hesitation and nervousness. But I can say that Marilyn's face is one of those that always calm me a little bit, and I have always appreciated all the work, the dedication. The new council not new, but new to me, Annalise, a very friendly face, I think, to a lot of people in Missoula. John, I've known you for a long time, and I appreciate all the work that you did for all of us. And Emily, too, I think it's true that for a lot of us in the, I don't want to say how old I am, but for my generation, it was really interesting and exciting to have somebody in our generation be elected to council. So I thank you for all your work.
Mr. Von Lossberg. I know. Teasing you. Go ahead, John. Oh.
Yeah. I don't blame him. You know, I always kind of speak from the heart. I don't really put any notes down, things like that. Did I scare you when you came in from Maryland? Made you happy, but I must have scared you. Okay, I was just curious. You know, I really enjoyed city council most of the time. And I'm really proud of my neighbor, Ward 4, elected me as much as they did. And I'm really proud of the people that have called me and supported me right now. I appreciate that very much, and thank you, everybody that done that. Being on council, there was times that I kind of had to bend over backwards to work with people because we were kind of the opposite of views. But I've always tried to, I haven't always done it, but I've always tried to be a fair guy with some of the people. Little quirks about the city council that kind of got to me. You know, it's great for people to be able to get up here and get their 3 minutes, and I respect that immensely, and respect the freedom of speech. But just my own personal view, I've been hearing so much of that communist manifesto, political, whatever, that I would really like somebody to come up and read Huck Finn. I think it would just be great to hear that. I haven't read it in years, and I could probably get caught up in it. All right, so anyway, thank you very much, everybody. And I'm going to take my name and get the heck out of here.
Mr. Von Lossberg.
I made some comments next door at the Mar-Bar Cow. I won't repeat those about each of the individual council members going off. But in general, for all of you, I started jotting down these words, and thank you for being people of great integrity. Thank you for being examples of public servants with values. Thanks for your leadership. Thank you for your courage, doing what you've done and representing those values. And the mayor touched on it. I think most importantly, thank you for your compassion and your empathy. Great lessons for all of us in the entire community. I'm just deeply grateful for your service. So thanks.
Mr. Hess.
Marilyn and John, I guess, maybe started out when I was in school going to studying planning here at in the geography department. You guys were sometimes my little TV friends where we'd watch meetings as homework and follow issues, and so it's been a real pleasure to get to know you in that capacity, and then have the honor of working with you. To everyone who's leaving, it's just been such an honor and a privilege to work with you. I've learned a lot, and I will miss you. I will adapt to new faces, and I welcome our incoming members, but I'll sure miss having you here.
Ms. Brock.
Thanks. I didn't prepare comments, and sometimes I get stoic in emotional situations, but I did write down a few things, or a few names of people, some issues jotted down. First off, I wanted to just thank you, Mayor, for your leadership. when we started council, one of the last acts of the council before I started was to authorize the mayor to begin condemnation proceedings and for water, and we did a big thing. It was really big, and I'll probably go my whole life and never do anything that big again. And I thank you for your leadership and for letting us all be a part of it. Thanks to Brian and Annalise for your friendship, and Marilyn for your leadership, Jason Weiner for your mentorship, even though he's gone now. And thanks to my children who heard this was my last city council meeting and are really happy to have me back on Monday nights. Yeah, that's all. I'm gonna just leave it right there. So.
Mr. DeBoer?
Yes. So I will continue the trend here, and I want to say thank you to everyone who is leaving, and I will say a few words about each of you, and I'll go around the table, starting with Ms. Heddall, who is one of the most funny people I know, and I really appreciate the opportunity to have sat and heard your stories at the Mar Bar next door, and I think you're quite down to earth and have a very practical approach to things, and I'm sure you're an awesome realtor. And I also appreciate your ever-changing and stylish hairstyles. Ms. Marler, I want to thank you for your leadership and your, I guess, steady hand and calmness and guidance. I've really appreciated that as council president, and appreciated being able to pick up the phone and call you and get great advice about ways forward and good ways to think about and approach things, and so I will definitely miss that. Mr. Wilkins, I greatly appreciate serving with you. I came to know you when I served on the neighborhood council, and I appreciated your input and leadership in that role in the past, and in guiding the neighborhood council as well. I appreciate also, and will miss, although we haven't done it in a while, having lunch at the Ox. And I know that you did a very thoughtful and admirable job of representing the constituents of Ward 4, and I think that will be greatly missed by a number of people in our ward and in the community, so thank you so much. And Ms. Brock, thank you, maybe, for passing the torch of LUP. And I will say that in probably more ways than I'll be able to express, I've learned a lot from you, and definitely appreciate your strategic thinking and the way you approach problems, and also share advice and provide guidance. And I will greatly miss that, but I know where to find you, and we'll continue to work on the fairgrounds. And thank you very much.
Ms. Armstrong.
We came into council at a difficult time. I think there were some really contentious issues, and if the people at this table had not been here, I think those of us that were freshmen at the time might have just absolutely crumbled. So the leadership was palpable at every meeting. Having lunch with Mr. Wilkins often calmed me down every day during committees, and he let me know that everything was okay, and he was probably one of my first best friends on council. And Annalise is one of the smartest people I've ever known, and she will deny that up and down, and we've had those conversations over and over again, but she's amazing, and I will miss working with her. And Emily taught me how to stay focused and stay fierce and not get emotional about issues when that was the road I wanted to go down, and that I will always remember that, so thank you. I'm just going to miss you all very much. I can't even tell you what Marilyn means to me. By being an animal lover, just first of all, I mean, she's an amazing person with a diverse background, and she's incredibly compassionate to the point of it being painful, and I absolutely respect that she comes in here every day and sets policy, and that she cares so much. So I'm going to miss all of you.
We have no new business because we're back in order. Are there any additional items to be referred? Seeing none, any miscellaneous communications, reports, petitions, or announcements? With that, once again and always, I thank you for your service. We will be adjourned.